direct from his automobile in the parking lot of the Home Depot in
Gatineau,
Quebec, is Phil Warrick, class of
87.
87. Really? Okay. When did you start?
At Grebel?
Yeah.
Well, I started at Waterloo in 82 and moved into residence in 83.
Uh-huh.
And spent two terms in residence.
Okay.
I was in the co-op with engineering, of course. So those were 2 4-month periods. And yeah, if maybe I'll just say a little bit about Grebel. Grebel was formative, of course, and even though I was a techno nerd, I was very much moved by my connections with students at Grebel who were not studying engineering, and of course there was a few of us who were engineers who had that Grebel experience in common. Wayne Cornelson comes to mind, and
how did you find out about Grebel? How did you end up there?
How did I end up at Grebel? Well, Kevin Ranney and Elaine Ranney were good friends from high school, and Gord Dernan was a good friend from high school via Kevin, and they of course went to Grebel in first year in 82. So I was kind of over to see them and to experience Grebel a little bit that first year, and decided that I wanted to I started coming to chapel that first year, liked John Rempel sermons, and just I liked the chapel environment immensely, and thought that I might find a home on several levels there, socially and spiritually and so forth. And yeah. So, and I did eventually take courses. I didn't have much room for courses with my curriculum, but I took some theology courses with James Reimer that just blew my mind, and it's like if I could crystallize that in a phrase, it would be like doubt is okay, and using our minds is okay, which was pounded into me as not okay growing up, to say the least.
You and I, Phil, have the same background, right?
You and I have the same background, and it's very interesting. The Plymouth Brethren connection there, which has been an interesting way for us to interact and share common old experiences and transitions also. How do we go from where we were to somewhere where we'd like to be? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that experience, specifically with Reimer's systematic theology courses, led me to want to do more than I was able to do with my engineering studies. So I went, and this is another commonality, that I went to Regent College in the seminary in evangelical seminary in Vancouver at UBC campus, as you did a few years before me, and you actually gave me some really helpful advice about why it was actually, I can't remember what you said. It was very
That's probably the best. It's probably safest. My advice is almost certainly best forgotten.
No, but I honestly I felt like it was following your footsteps. It was a way to address those old notions that have been hammered into us growing up in that fundamentalist evangelical world, in an evangelical world that was much broader and much more open to conversation in a way that I had appreciated at Grebel.
Mhm.
And I met wonderful people at Regent, and it didn't necessarily heal me, quote unquote, as my parents hoped, but it did put those early formative religious years in a different perspective, and
Right.
not such a less resentment, and or at least I was able to move through resentment a little better, knowing that evangelical world was bigger than I had experienced.
Right. So
Yeah.
so that's I mean, that was sort of a first step out of post Grebel. Can you give us a sense of where else? What have you been doing in the 35 years since you walked out the door?
Well, my first engineering job coming back from Vancouver was in Toronto, working for a neurology technology company that were making an electroencephalogram machine using a PC. That was kind of a new thing those days, or early 90s, to use these PCs for medical devices. And that's where I thought I could make a career, was applying my electrical engineering studies to medicine. And I met Sylvain, my first wife, in Toronto, who was French, and she found a job in Montreal. And a few years later, I followed her there, and we set up life and got married in Montreal, and had our child, Nolan. And I moved to another firm in Montreal doing biomedical engineering, and eventually did my master's at McGill in biomedical engineering as Nolan was growing up. And enjoyed research immensely. Eventually went back to industry for a few years in the obstetrical world with fetal surveillance during labor and delivery, and decided that was something that needed more research. So I went back and did my doctorate at McGill in that area.
Can I slow you down for a minute?
Yes.
So terms like biomedical engineering for lowly English teachers, I don't really know what that is. I mean, I have a rough idea, but what were you doing, Phil?
Well, Waterloo at the time, maybe things have changed. Waterloo didn't have anything like biomedical engineering, which is basically application of technology to medical problems in its essence. But all that math theory and physics and all that stuff that I learned, systems theory, was all very excellent preparatory work for applying it to a medical problem instead of just any old problem. And so basically, I was a software person. I've learned some hardware along the way, but mostly I was a software person, designing programs to acquire medical data and to analyze medical data and make sense of it, especially in the later years with the fetal heart rate, how to make sense of that signal for diagnostic purposes.
Okay, so
how's the baby doing?
Okay, so that language I understood. How's the baby doing? Got that. So
yes,
you were doing software that would listen to heartbeats of fetuses and analyze.
During labor and delivery, and specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, with an ultrasound probe, which can detect not only the maternal heart rate but also the little tiny fetal heart rate.
Okay, and so this presumably picked up problems very, very early compared to the old days. Is that?
Yeah, well, it started in the 60s, and it's been surrounded in controversy because there was absolutely no clinical trials, no clinical rationale for putting it into clinical use, and it's only been lately that we've started to actually show its potential and limitations. It does have the potential to better assess how the baby's doing without doing a C-section unnecessarily.
Okay.
So that's the idea, is to do C-sections for the right reasons at the right time, if at all.
Right.
Yeah, and so that was that. In the midst of that, my marriage deteriorated, and I eventually divorced Sylvain, my first wife, and I met Livia after my doctorate. We got together after my doctorate, and we've been together since then, since 2008. We got married in 2009, 10, 9. Yeah, it was at Christmas time, 2009, just before 2010. And so I had the pleasure of having a stepdaughter, Alba. No, in addition to Nolan, Alba is Livia's daughter, and it's been very nice to have a larger family in that sense. Yeah.
And you are no longer in Montreal. Where are you, and how did you get there?
Right. After almost 30 years in Montreal, Livia and I moved to the country north of Gatineau, north of Ottawa, to a place called Wakefield, Quebec. And we live in the woods, and it's been a very nice experience. We moved just before the pandemic, so it was great timing in a sense. And yeah, I work remotely. I've been able to make that happen. It's very very convenient that I can have a career where I can work at home in that way.
Excellent, excellent. And you wander in the woods and find mushrooms to eat.
Yes, in the fall, mushrooms are great. This week, as I was cross country skiing, 3 or 4 times, I just strap on my skis outside my front door. Away I go, and I have just kilometers and kilometers of trails in woods and lakes and hills. A lot of very hilly area in the Gatineau Hills region. We're not far from the Gatineau Park, but we have lots of nature trails, which you saw at one point on your visit, Ken. I just love that part. I mean, I'm almost tempted to say that winter has returned as my favorite season. That's the way it was when I was a kid. But winter in the city is just all slush and brownness, which I'd never liked. But seeing the winter snow reflecting off or the sun reflecting off that white snow is, for miles and miles, is just something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you live on the side of a hill. The first few meters of a cross-country ski would involve either breakneck speed down
definitely climb.
Okay, so
yeah, it starts
first.
with a climb and it ends with an exhilarating descent.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So, no, tell me, when you think back to your Grebel days, dorm life. As an engineer, were you too busy to do the dorm life thing much, or did you throw yourself into it?
Well, I guess a little bit of both. At times I was jealous isn't the right word. I was amazed at how much the work cycle of other folks occurred. Like there was this big amount of the early months seemed to be just happy-go-lucky, and then everybody would just buckle down for 4 weeks straight and not talk to you or something.
Right. I remember that.
Whereas we really need to keep the pace in order to stay afloat, like from September 1st onwards, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's just my personal opinion on it. I mean, I was also amazed at how much less effort some engineers needed to put into their studies to survive. I needed to give it my all.
Yeah.
It was very challenging. I found engineering to be very challenging, but in the best sort of way.
Yeah. Yeah. But you still had a little time to enjoy Grebel life?
Of course. I mean, Friday nights and Saturday nights, there was something on, generally, and you know the rhythm of meals and being able to take a moment to speak with people over meals. Of course, that was very very great.
Yeah.
As a counterbalance to all that stress.
Yeah. 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 Would you say, I mean, you've already suggested some things, but about this, but the way of thinking that you encountered at Grebel, would you say it was a significant part of shaping who you are now and what you've done since then?
Yes, I think the words of one of the Grebel profs, the academic dean, Ron something or other.
Sawatsky,
right. He exhorted folks to study according to their passion and not according to some utilitarian way of looking at the world and our experience in this university moment. And it wasn't just in isolation. It was also within this Anabaptist understanding of things that this university experience was not a like to get a key to a comfy career, but to open our minds and explore things and take time to question, to look at questions of what it is to be human. I thought that was really helpful as an engineer, because I wouldn't get that kind of thing. I did have a close connection with one of my engineering profs who was heavily involved in the disarmament, scientific disarmament movement. I did a co-op term with him. He did semiconductor physics research, and that was, I think, my experience at Grebel put that kind of relationship in a very interesting light. It was really helpful for me to see a thoughtful engineering prof, because I thought the only truly thoughtful and open to the world profs that I had really contacted or run into were in the humanities, and especially at Grebel.
Right.
But the world is a big place, and there's beautiful people if you're open to finding them, and everywhere.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very good. Well, Phil, I think I'm going to let you focus now on your driving, and we'll talk again soon.
Bye, Ken.
Bye-bye.